Have you ever wondered why, long after someone walks away, they suddenly begin to feel your absence in the deepest corners of their heart? It isn't about loss or longing alone. It's the realization of what they underestimated. Those who embrace a Stoic path carry a unique presence, steady, composed, and deeply grounded. When you live with integrity and strength, your absence leaves a profound void that others cannot ignore. You see, it's not about making anyone regret losing you. It's about embodying such inner power and virtue that the memory of you becomes inescapable. Today, let's dive into the Stoic perspective on why they feel your absence more than you realize. Number 1. The power of being unshaken. When someone chooses to walk away, the instinctive response for many is to seek closure or validation. Questions fill the mind. Why did they leave? Was it something I did? Yet, the true strength lies in resisting this emotional storm. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. A Stoic understands this deeply. Their strength doesn't stem from outward displays of indifference, but from an unrelenting focus on self-mastery. By anchoring themselves in logic and virtue, they refuse to be controlled by external forces. Instead of reacting emotionally, they embrace silence, not as a sign of weakness, but as a demonstration of inner control. In moments of rejection, silence speaks volumes. It tells the world, and those who wronged you, that your worth is not defined by external validation. This silence isn't passive. It's an active choice to protect your peace and project your resilience. Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Reactions betray vulnerabilities, but restraint cultivates respect. Here's the truth. When you refuse to engage in the chaos, your composure becomes a mirror. Those who left begin to see their own instability reflected back at them. What they anticipated, anger, pleading, or even sorrow, never arrives. Instead, they are faced with a calm, steady presence that stands tall despite the storm. It's this quiet dignity that unsettles them. And why does it unsettle them? Because they expected to be the center of your narrative. They anticipated that their absence would create ripples of doubt and despair. Instead, your silence sends a message. I am whole without you. This is not arrogance, but clarity. A clarity that comes from valuing yourself over the opinions or actions of others. Time becomes your greatest ally. With each passing day, their assumptions about you crumble. They believed your world would fall apart without them, yet they watch as you thrive in ways they never expected. Each success, each moment of peace they witness, feels like a challenge to their initial choice. The quiet strength of a Stoic is a paradox. It is soft yet unyielding, silent yet loud. It forces those who left to confront a harsh truth. Their departure did not break you. Instead, it became the catalyst for your growth. This realization is unsettling. Their ego, once inflated by the belief that they were indispensable, begins to shrink under the weight of your quiet resilience. It is in this stillness that regret begins to take root. Not because of what they lost, but because of what they failed to value in the first place. The Stoic response to rejection isn't just about self-preservation, it's about transformation. By choosing self-mastery over reaction, you become untouchable, unshaken, and undeniably whole. Number 2. Understanding the illusion of control. When a person walks away from you, it may feel as though the ground beneath you is shifting. But this sensation is nothing more than the illusion of control slipping away. For the Stoic, this realization is not a source of despair. It is a point of empowerment. They understand, as Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. When someone leaves, they are merely affirming that they do not belong in your life. But this should not be seen as an attack or an injustice. The Stoic does not lament the loss of someone who was never truly in alignment with their values. Instead, they recognize that every action we take, every choice we make, is within our control, while the actions of others are not. The Stoic does not waste energy seeking to control the uncontrollable. They know that trying to change the hearts of others to force affection or loyalty is a futile pursuit. This knowledge frees them from the shackles of resentment or longing. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. When someone leaves, the Stoic mind calmly examines the situation. Why did this happen? Was there something in their behavior that reflected a value misalignment? Rather than looking for emotional validation or pleading for them to stay, a Stoic takes a pragmatic approach. What lessons can be learned here? The focus turns inward. Rather than wallowing in pain or loss, they begin the task of self-examination. In this light, we can see that rejection is not personal. It is simply a reflection of the constant flow of life. People come, people go, relationships evolve, and sometimes they end. It is the Stoics' ability to accept this inevitable truth with grace that sets them apart. They accept that they cannot control others' choices, only their response. This detachment, however, should not be confused with coldness. Stoicism teaches that we should still be kind, compassionate, and empathetic. But these emotions should not hold us captive. The Stoic remains present, but never possessed by the attachment to any one person, event, or outcome. The obstacle is the way, said Marcus Aurelius, and by learning to accept and move past rejection, the Stoic transforms potential suffering into growth. Here's the truth. The Stoic sense of self-worth is never dependent on external validation. Their sense of purpose is derived from the consistent practice of virtue. When someone leaves, it does not diminish them. It reveals the importance of self-sufficiency. The Stoic knows that their value is not determined by the approval or affection of others. And so, while the person who left may feel that they have taken something away from you, the Stoic understands that nothing was lost in the first place. What remains is a calm, unshakable self-reliance. Through the lens of Stoicism, rejection is simply a chance to reassert control over what truly matters, the cultivation of inner virtue and peace. The very act of accepting this can be transformative. The Stoic, unaffected by the whims of others, continues to move forward, steady in their resolve, while the one who left is left to face their own choices and internal conflict. The Stoic thrives in the clarity of knowing what they can and cannot control. They emerge not weaker, but stronger, reinforced in their commitment to their own path. Number 3, the power of emotional mastery. The pain of someone leaving or rejecting you is rooted in emotions. It's these emotions that stir our deepest fears, doubts, and vulnerabilities. Yet, the Stoic understands that emotions, while natural, are often beyond our control. What we can control, however, is how we respond to them. As Epictetus wisely stated, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When someone walks away, the initial rush of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion, can feel overwhelming. But the Stoic doesn't let these emotions dictate their course. Instead, they acknowledge them, observe them, and allow them to pass through them without attaching to them. They do not deny their emotions, but they do not allow them to dominate their actions or thoughts. This is a key principle in Stoicism, emotional mastery. Rather than repressing or denying emotions, a Stoic understands that emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are simply reactions to external stimuli. The key lies in choosing how to handle them. The Stoic learns to detach from emotional responses by reminding themselves that emotions are just fleeting judgments. They come and go like waves crashing on the shore. For instance, when faced with rejection, it's easy to feel betrayed, abandoned, or unworthy. But rather than letting those emotions fuel destructive thoughts or behaviors, the Stoic pauses. They reflect, is this judgment valid? Do I have control over the actions of others? And ultimately, they remind themselves that their worth is not dependent on another person's treatment or approval. By practicing emotional mastery, the Stoic develops resilience, the ability to weather life's storms without being consumed by them. Just as a tree bends in the wind but doesn't break, the Stoic learns to bend with the winds of emotion, allowing the storm to pass without losing their center. This is the strength that comes from knowing that emotional turbulence is temporary, and that peace lies in choosing how to engage with it. The key to overcoming emotional suffering is to see emotions not as something to be feared or suppressed, but as signals that there's something within us that requires attention. Is the pain from rejection a reminder of our attachment to external validation? Is the anger an indication of a perceived injustice? The Stoic examines these emotions through a lens of curiosity, not judgment. What results from this process is not only emotional clarity, but also inner peace. The Stoic is not a person devoid of emotion, but a person who understands that emotions are fleeting and often illogical. They strive to live by reason and wisdom, knowing that they can choose how to act, regardless of what they feel. By doing so, they build a calm, unshakable foundation within themselves that is impervious to the turbulence of the external world. By mastering their emotions, the Stoic achieves freedom. Freedom from external influence, from the approval of others, and from the tyranny of negative emotions. As Seneca once stated, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True freedom comes from the ability to direct one's emotions, not be enslaved by them. This, in essence, is the Stoic way of handling rejection and loss. It is not by denying emotions or pretending they don't exist, but by embracing them, understanding them, and choosing to respond with wisdom and restraint. The Stoics' mastery over their emotions makes them unshakable. They remain grounded, no matter the storm of feelings they may experience. Through this lens, the rejection of others, rather than being a cause for devastation, becomes an opportunity for growth. It is a test of one's emotional fortitude, resilience, and ability to stay centered amidst external chaos. The Stoic faces rejection not as a victim, but as a conqueror of their own emotional landscape. Number 4. The power of detachment. One of the core principles of Stoicism is the practice of detachment, detaching oneself from external outcomes and the approval or disapproval of others. This is not about withdrawing from life or becoming indifferent to human connection, but rather about recognizing that our happiness should not be contingent upon things we cannot control. This principle is especially crucial when it comes to relationships and the losses that sometimes come with them. When a woman leaves your life or chooses to move on, it can feel like a deep loss, like something essential is missing. But the Stoic perspective teaches us that attachment to the outcomes of relationships leads to suffering. If we are attached to the idea of someone's presence in our life, when they inevitably leave, it feels as though we are losing a part of ourselves. But if we can cultivate detachment, we free ourselves from this painful cycle. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, wrote in his Meditations, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts." What Marcus is saying is that our attachment to an outcome, whether it's a relationship or anything else, colors our inner world. When we become attached to someone else's behavior or decisions, we hand over our inner peace to them. In that way, our emotional state is no longer under our control. The Stoic understands that the only thing within their control is their own mind and actions. The moment we become attached to an outcome, a relationship, a person's love, or a particular result, we give up our power. We become subject to whatever happens, and thus our emotional state fluctuates in response to events outside of our control. To detach is not to feel nothing, but to recognize that attachment to people, things, or situations only increases our vulnerability to emotional turmoil. True inner peace comes from accepting the impermanence of all things and knowing that our happiness does not depend on anything external. We can love, we can care, but we must not attach ourselves to the idea of permanence in these connections. When we practice detachment, we free ourselves from the anxiety that comes with change and loss. We understand that relationships may evolve, and sometimes people leave. But that departure, however painful, doesn't define us. Our worth is not tied to another person's presence in our lives. We can grieve, yes, but we do not spiral into self-destructive emotions or lose our sense of self in the process. The Stoic realizes that true freedom comes from within, and that no one's departure can rob them of their inner peace unless they allow it to. It's easy to become entangled in the idea that we need someone to complete us, to validate our worth, or to provide us with a sense of happiness. But Stoicism teaches us the opposite. We are complete as we are, and we find peace not in external validation, but in self-mastery. By practicing detachment, we learn to let go of the need for constant external affirmation. We realize that we can stand strong and confident without relying on anyone else's presence or approval. Detachment is not about rejecting love or avoiding connections with others. It's about loving without attachment. It's about cherishing relationships without depending on them for our emotional well-being. The Stoic remains grounded in their own sense of worth, unaffected by whether others remain by their side. They understand that the journey of life is filled with both arrivals and departures, and that nothing truly belongs to us, except the control we have over ourselves. By practicing detachment, we regain control over our own lives. We no longer react impulsively or emotionally to others' actions, and instead we choose to act in accordance with reason and virtue. The Stoics' emotional freedom comes from knowing that, in the grand scheme of things, nothing external can truly affect their peace unless they allow it to. Number 5. The strength of self-resilience. In the face of loss, whether from rejection or the end of a relationship, the Stoics' ability to practice resilience becomes a defining trait. Stoicism teaches us that we are bound to face hardships in life, but what matters is not the hardship itself, but how we respond to it. The Stoic does not shy away from pain or difficulty, but faces it with a steadfast, composed mind. It is easy to be caught up in the narrative that we are victims of circumstance, believing that the loss of someone or the rejection we experience diminishes us in some way. However, the Stoic approach flips this notion on its head. We are not defined by the circumstances we face, but by how we respond to them. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus writes in his Enchiridion, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This quote is a powerful reminder that the events of our lives are outside of our control, but our reaction to them is fully within our grasp. When faced with rejection or the end of a relationship, the Stoic does not spiral into self-pity or anger. Instead, they acknowledge the emotion, but then choose to respond with reason, wisdom, and courage. Resilience is not about denying pain or pretending that we are unaffected by loss. It is about acknowledging the pain and then choosing to rise above it. The Stoic understands that suffering is a natural part of the human experience, but they do not allow it to consume them. They possess the strength to endure, to adapt, and to move forward, knowing that pain is temporary and growth is permanent. This is the strength of self-resilience, the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity and not be shattered by it. When a woman walks away from your life, the Stoic does not let that loss define their worth. Instead, they turn inward, focusing on their own values and purpose. They know that their happiness is not contingent upon the presence of any one person, and they are unshaken by the changes in their external world. In the aftermath of rejection, the Stoic understands that this is an opportunity for growth. Rejection, while painful, offers valuable lessons in self-awareness, self-improvement, and emotional control. It is a chance to reflect on what went wrong, to identify areas for personal growth, and to strengthen one's inner character. Through resilience, the Stoic finds the courage to move forward, wiser and stronger than before. Self-resilience also involves the capacity to forgive, both others and ourselves. When we are hurt, there's a temptation to hold on to anger, to blame others for our suffering. But the Stoic realizes that anger only chains them to the past, preventing them from moving forward. Instead, they practice forgiveness, not for the sake of the other person, but for their own peace of mind. Forgiving others and forgiving ourselves releases us from the chains of resentment and allows us to heal. The Stoic does not fall into the trap of bitterness or regret. Instead, they face their pain, confront their emotions, and rise above them. By practicing self-resilience, they cultivate an inner strength that cannot be easily broken. They find peace not in the absence of pain, but in their ability to endure and grow through it. It is this inner fortitude, this ability to rise again after every fall, that makes the Stoic truly powerful. They understand that no external event, no matter how painful, can break them unless they allow it to. And so, when faced with loss, rejection, or difficulty, the Stoic responds with courage, wisdom, and resilience, knowing that they are the masters of their own fate. Conclusion: the power of letting go and moving forward. As we come to the end of our journey, we find ourselves staring into the heart of the Stoic perspective, a mindset that encourages self-mastery, emotional fortitude, and a resilient approach to life's inevitable hardships. Through every word, every concept, we've come to understand that loss, rejection, and pain are part of life, but they do not define us. What defines us is how we respond to them. The Stoic way is not to run from pain or hide in avoidance, but to confront it head-on. The true strength lies not in escaping loss, but in how we emerge from it, wiser, stronger, and more grounded in our own sense of self. Women, like anyone, feel loss deeply, but when we choose to embody Stoicism, we create a path for ourselves where our sense of worth is not tethered to anyone's validation. We are our own source of strength, peace, and purpose. We do not need the approval of another to feel complete. When a woman leaves, the Stoic does not crumble. Rather, they rise, knowing that this moment is temporary. This too shall pass. Their inner peace is unshakable. To walk the path of Stoicism is to recognize that loss is not an end but an opportunity, a chance to grow, to deepen our understanding of ourselves, and to strengthen our resolve. We embrace change, not as a threat, but as part of the flow of life. In doing so, we not only transcend the pain, but become better versions of ourselves. In the end, the Stoic does not seek to be admired or sought after. They live according to their own values, free from the need for external validation. Their strength lies in their ability to detach from the fleeting moments of life and focus on what is truly in their control: their thoughts, their actions, and their responses to the world around them. So the next time you face loss, whether it is a person, a relationship, or a situation, remember this: you are the master of your fate. You have the power to shape your response and to emerge from the ashes as someone stronger, more grounded, and more resilient than ever before. This is the true strength of Stoicism: the ability to face adversity and to come through it, not as a victim, but as a warrior who knows that the only thing that truly matters is how you choose to live your life in the face of it all. Let us all take this journey of self-mastery, where the loss of anyone or anything does not shake us but instead becomes a catalyst for our personal growth. Because in the end, it is not the loss that defines us, but the strength with which we rise above it. And with that, we walk forward, not looking back, but always moving toward becoming the best version of ourselves. If you found this perspective valuable, don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or experiences. Engage with us. We'd love to hear how Stoicism has influenced your life and how you've applied these principles in overcoming challenges. Keep your mindset strong and keep walking forward. And if you seriously want to level up in life, don't forget to show some love by hitting the like and subscribe button. Stay strong. Until next time.